I'm going to give you some basic information on FER transformational technique that you can use for explanation, as an explanation for yourself or your clients. So, FER transformation technique is interpersonal self-help psychotherapeutic method, and it's designed to eliminate emotional baggage, what we call suppressed emotions, basically through the integration of energy and emotional charge from trauma, past negative experiences, anxieties, fears, phobias, resistances, compulsiveness of any type, weaknesses, panic attacks, jealousies, aggressions, any unwanted internal psychological stresses or emotional problems, including negative thoughts and feelings or unpleasant psychological sensations, or even devastating decisions from the past or other contexts that have significant impact into your life. So FER is abbreviation for Free Authentic Integration Release. Method is easy, very easy, practical, and dignified, without any cathartic states or large outbursts of emotions. It's confidential, so the client may decide not to reveal the topic of a problem which is going to be solved, and can be applied by anybody who follows the instructions of the workshops and webinar. So this technique is basically used for long-term problems, but also for the emergency interventions, such as if you're going through a stressful, uncomfortable situation, or even if you're stuck in traffic and you're feeling frustration because you're stuck in traffic, or because somebody didn't treat you properly the way you want to be treated, or whatever. These techniques can also be applied to reveal the pain as well. So we know that every thought and emotion has its own purpose. When we suppress certain emotions, we basically reject its purpose. For example, if we deny our fear, then we may not have a complete access to energy that fear connects us with, or no, we have entirely aware of dangers that set the energy of fear in motion. So repressed aspects often include emotions of desires, especially those that we might consider embarrassing or disturbing, that we're not even aware of. And that means that we have taken on difficult, unpleasant emotions that we are not comfortable with. Mostly, those are the emotions that we suppress most of the time when we were children, in our childhood. And we have hidden it on our unconscious to such an extent that we are no longer aware that we have it at all. And repression causes what? Emotional stiffness. When we know that we have a feeling that we don't want to feel, we basically consciously try to avoid it, and that's literally suppression. We suppress by intellectually denying the reality of an emotion, and we are desensitizing our awareness of the moment and pressure of that emotional energy within us. But here's the most important part. The degree to which we suppress one emotional or sensation is exactly the degree to which we suppress all contrasting ones. Yep. For example, if you reject the feeling of fear and anger, then you lose the ability to fully, truly feel love and contentment or peace. When we integrate sorrow, then and only then we have a chance to experience true joy. When we integrate aggression, then we have ability to experience true peace. When we integrate anger, then we have the ability to experience true happiness, and so on. So as long as we suppress something, that something will persevere. Whatever you resist persists, and it's this aspect that creates uncomfortable situations in our lives, not other people as we think, because other people are just our own mirrors. You see, we cannot play our own conscious game by ourselves. We need players. But suppressed emotion creates circumstances, but because we don't see the emotion, we can only see people, we blame other people and not the emotions. That's the trick. But actually, it's the other people are just own mirrors. And with this technique, you're going to understand that, and you're going to experience it fully, because you will get a point of view of that other person that's involved in a problem, and you will understand that whatever that other person is feeling is basically yours. And then we accept every emotion, both the so-called positive and negative, because we all have yin and yang within us. There's good and bad in all of us, both beautiful and ugly. Everything is already within us. That's called whole, completeness, wholeness. And generally speaking, it's simply impossible to see ourselves through our own eyes, except in a mirror. Other people are just own mirrors, because in order for you to play your unconscious game, you do need the players. You need other people to whom we can see our repressed, suppressed issues that are invisible to us when we're analyzing ourselves, but we can easily see them in others. A lot of people know that droplets are part of the ocean. A few people are really aware of the power of ocean. It's in each drop. God, universe, conscious, call it any way you want. It's everywhere. It's in each body. In each body, or avatar, whatever you call this. And there's nothing beyond that. It is complete. You had internal and infinite timeless space, multiverse, and multi-time to play all these games with yourself through different expressions. Those different expressions are what we call different people, avatars, different bodies, through you and me, through every living thing, because one is expressed into duality, to play these games of duality, of separation, while in reality, that yin and yang are what? They're inseparable. They always have been. It's just that consciousness has infinite number of points, because every identification, let's say Tatiana, yeah, so me through Tatiana overlooking her perception or whatever this is. So I'm having a point of view, goal, and perception that all the filters goes through. So that's one point of view. Second point of view is Mark, Ben, Bill, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's infinite number of points of view participating with each other in the same parallel time. Thinking it's an illusion. Having an illusion that we are separate from one another, but in reality, it's me talking to myself through you. It's you talking to yourself through me. It's so simple. Through this technique, you're going to understand that everything that's happening in your reality comes from within your emotions. So you will realize that all the emotions, good and bad, obvious or repressed, everything is within us. And everything that happens to us is precisely the product of internal discord. So using the FER transformational technique, you can integrate the repressed emotions into the wholeness without bypassing, without hiding, without repressing. And once they're integrated into unity of themselves, to wholeness, our thoughts and emotions are no longer controlled, and they're no longer compulsive and impulsive. So energy that has been stuck there in resistance and repression is going to be released, and love and joy can finally be fully experienced. Until that moment, we are way too busy dealing with repression, rejection, judgments, condemnations, or whatever, on ourselves and others, both. So this technique is very fast in comparison to the classical psychotherapy, and gives good results in eliminating even phobias or other emotional problems. Basically, the whole process consists of integration of the repressed emotions that we resisted, suppressed, and released when we were given our lives, and the stuff that pops up when you least need it, when you least expect it. Because why? It wants to be integrated with the wholeness, with us, but we don't let it. No, because why? Culturally, I'm conditioned that I'm nice, sweet, and adorable, so I'm not supposed to be aggressive, pathetic, lunatic, whatever. And I don't let that emotion be integrated with a wholeness. I'm ignoring that emotion because I don't want to be associated with that emotion. You see? Because that one aspect of us is stuck on the reference point of a child, while the rest of us continue evaluation, and that one aspect will keep continuing and creating circumstances in our lives that are always dramatic and traumatic in nature. So remember, it's not other people who create circumstances in your lives, it's a suppressed emotion that does it. Other people are just playing the role because they have the complementary games, unconscious games. They're also fulfilling their stories as well, because those are just stories. And nothing has any meaning but the meaning we give it anyway. And stories are what? Excuses. Excuses for not integration. And that's why they're repetitive. And that's why they're going in a vicious cycle over and over again. And they will go forever until you integrate them. So the sooner you learn this technique, the better for you. Because then you'll be free. You won't be running in a vicious cycle or circle, whatever that is. Understanding that we never ever have a relationship with other people. We only have a relationship with our constructs and projections about these other people. So once we change our constructs and projections about these other people, our relationship changes, transforms completely. And others are here just to keep us aware of what is within ourselves that needs to be changed. Because in others, we can only see our own qualities and our own flaws. Other people are just our own mirrors. We then realize that drama is actually created by repressed emotions, but we don't see the emotions, so that's why we blame other people. But in order to continue the evaluation, it's necessary to integrate these emotions with the wholeness, with the rest of the whole. Here's an example. Let's say you're 3 years old. And let's say something happens, like you're playing with your toys, your big brother or sister jumps in the house, upset, mad, angry, whatever. They come in and they're storming and they tore all your Legos or whatever, your toys on the floor, tearing everything down, being so upset that you don't want to do or say anything, because you know if you say something in that moment or react, which is natural reaction, to the things that all your toys are now on the floor. There's something you've been playing for hours, now it's ruined. So instead of you reacting, you decide to hold it within yourself, because if you say something, you might actually get beaten up by your older brother, sister, or whoever, sibling, or even parents. It doesn't matter. It's just a story. And because we are culturally taught that we must conform to the expectations of others to be nice, behave well, be good, whatever, it doesn't matter. God forbid that you authentically express your fears, anger, or rage, or whatever. So you experience something bad and then you suppressed it because you were afraid of consequences afterwards. And that emotion is stuck on the level of a 3-year-old. You continue evaluation, but that emotion is suppressed somewhere under the rug, as we say it, and it lives there for the rest of your life on the reference point of a 3-year-old, until you chose that moment and you integrate it, or through some other situation you integrate that emotion. But that emotion of not being enough, not deserving, I'm not allowed to be angry, whatever, I don't belong, whatever message that is, or emotion. Until you integrate it, it will keep repeating stories over and over and over again until it's completely integrated. And that's what it is. Because that undesirable emotion is going to be part of us for the rest of our lives until we integrate it. And that's why it's important to have these techniques. But also know that you cannot experience good without the bad. You cannot experience beautiful without the ugly. That's the polarities. They're one. There's nothing that's negative that can exist without a positive and vice versa. Because in essence, they're in duality. They're what? One coin with two sides. It's a wholeness, completeness. Sadly, most people settle with living a half life, like law of attraction, you know. I'm only going to be positive. Not really. It's impossible. Most people who live that positive, when they hit the floor, you can't get them up for a long time from the floor. Because most people are stuck playing their unconscious game, wasting both time and energy until the day they realize that and resolve the main unconscious game and understand that everything comes from inside out. One cannot exist without the others, and everything is connected. Everything is one, a whole. That repressed emotion, that aspect of you that comes up as a conflict situation causes you to behave like a child, throwing a tantrum, becoming hysterical, withdrawing, whatever. You act in a frame point of a 3-year-old. I'm not going to say you, but you, how many friends do you have who act like a 3-year-old or 5-year-old? When it's least needed or expected. Why? Whenever the original decision or emotions were suppressed. That's when it happened. I remember the all empirical sentence, give me the child at the age of 7, I'll show you the man. Ottoman Empire and Church used to use that sentence. Because why? Children accumulate everything when they're seed up to the age of 7. The epigenetic shapes them, and then after that, they shape their epigenetics. It's interesting. Why? It's like yin and yang. You and your epigenetic, observe and observed, same thing really. They create what? Whole. It's a completeness. This is a time of awakening. This is a time, Corona time, it's a crown. Time of real enlightening, because it's not enough just to wake up on a cognitive level. It's important to open up our hearts. Once you open up our hearts, then we are going to be enlightened, and that is why we're using this technique. Just be aware that it comes from within. Nothing comes from the side. Everything comes from within. And these repressed emotions are most of the time a reference point of the child. A lot of other philosophers have been talking about this. They explain in the books of Hinduism, Zen, Buddhism, Jung, Gurdjieff, Slavinsky. They all study this subject in detail. Repression does not stop at the age of 7, of course. We continue throughout the life, accumulating emotions that we don't want to deal with due to cultural and moral conditioning. Being that people tend to want to see themselves as the best possible light, they do not want to associate themselves with the negative. And these repressed emotions continue to create circumstances in our lives in order to get a new chance for integration within the wholeness with the rest of us. And that's why situations arise where we express ourselves impulsively, compulsively by automatism. The outbreak happens each time we have an episode, or when we have a strong reaction that we cannot control, yet we don't know why we have to behave that way. The scenario is the same throughout our life, only people involved are changing. Same drama, different acting crew, changing the same patterns. In essence, every time we lose control over ourselves, when we do things without a clear reason, and we don't know why these strong emotions came from, we are in the grips of the unconscious and repressed emotion. So the best explained law, it's a Lenz law that in electrical engineering that states that every phenomenon in nature opposes itself from the cause of its origin. So that's what it is. We forget or suppress these threatening, unpleasant experiences in the way to protect ourselves and our self-image. So in this way, in psychology, it's called like a defense mechanism. So our brain simply loses the ability to access, literally, to process, because of anxiety caused by situation interferes with its usual way of sorting information. It doesn't matter if it's repressed or suppressed, the elements remain intact and emotionally charged. And that charge continues to create recurring negative circumstances in our lives, dramas, to continue to extend and influence us on demanding integration. If we do not integrate repressed and suppressed emotions, these buried aspects can ruin our lives. And in the deepest level of existence, everything is one. From oneness comes the decision to achieve any goal. Once you realize that goal, or you satisfy that desire or decision, disappears into a source again, to void. But the problem arises when we encounter an obstacle in the realization of that decision that you wanted to solve. So you end up causing a new devastating decision. So you have two decisions: original one, I want to accomplish certain things, and then the devastating decision or limiting belief that's accompanied by repressed or suppressed emotion. So that devastating decision takes mental energy and emotional mass. And that could be through images, emotions, sounds, tastes, smells, bodily sensations, conclusions, justifications, losses, gains, beliefs, fantasies, and identifications. But as we remove the mental mass during the process, then they become to disappear, being integrated to oneness, timeless and infinite, because they are one. And then when you're in that state, at the end of the process, you will experience that, you will literally experience the place of oneness, literally, where boundaries and limitations are, they basically become to melt until they become one as they were before the existence. So everything that you were suppressing and holding on will be integrated to that wholeness, in that oneness. So what happens is that after integration, you can still experience these emotions, but in a way that is proportional to the situation. It will no longer be impulsive, compulsive, explosive, or automated. So then and only then you will have a control of your emotions, as opposed to the emotional outburst that typically controls our lives. And so one more thing, why is this technique different than anything else, is one, it's very efficient and fast comparison to the clinical psychology. So something that's bothering you for years, you can solve in like an hour or two. Technique is extremely easy to learn and can be applied to almost anybody who follows the process. And during the session, the key contexts are presented, and there's not really much storytelling. It's a questioning and asking specific questions and writing the answers from the client until the complete energy and emotional charge is integrated completely. Um, who are the participants for this technology? Basically, you have people who will come to you as alternative to traditional therapy. So this technique is ideal for people who are looking for like alternative to traditional therapy and who wants to save time and serious money on years of therapy sessions to neutralize their main issues and experiences and improvement in their perception of reality and overall feeling state. Then you have people who want to become FER practitioners. That's basically professional opportunity. So they can get a FER certificate for being a practitioner. And by utilizing these transformational tools, they can contribute to the well-being of others and also provide a sustainable income for themselves. Also, it's an additional technique for professionals. It's a complementary technique basically for psychotherapists, psychoanalysts, psychologists, coaches, personal trainers, or people who are interested in adding an efficient method to their practice. And of course, there's opportunity for you to become a coach. Basically, once you become FER transformational technique coach, first you have to become a practitioner, and then you have to do over 100 treatments on yourself and others to become a trainer. And then you can train and teach other people this technique for monetary compensation and certify other people in this technique as well. Because think about it, there's no living person without suppressed emotion, and this is the easiest and the most practical technique out there that anyone who can read, write, and follow directions can apply and solve any personal problems. So what's going to happen after each treatment? You're going to get an additional energy because you're going to release through integration of repressed emotions, beliefs, goals, intentions. Suppression of emotions takes away a lot of energy. So chronic fatigue or obsession with external stimulus like supplements are largely the results of this repression, and repression also consumes a lot of energy. So the effort invested in keeping the suppressed content in unconscious mind is like effort of keeping a floating object underwater. Basically, the additional energy that's restrained that energetic charge of the original repressed elements. So when the repressed material is released, then we can experience the memory of lightness and freedom and strength, because the energy we expanded throughout the effort to suppress is now available to be used for something positive. So I'm going to explain the difference between suppression and repression. Suppression is basically the conscious choice not to engage in particular thought, feeling, or action, like not to indulge. This means that we are aware of feelings or thoughts, but we consciously decide not to dwell on it internally by continuing to talk about it, or not to express it externally, or acting out as in a way or that we usually suffer because it's inappropriate to act on an impulse in a relationship to situation because of the time of constraints. For example, I simply cannot deal with this right now, and then I decide to suppress it, and it's useful psychological mechanism that allows me to concentrate on a task without interfering from an impulse that arises. So I acknowledge the impulse and accept the presence and the fact that it could reappear again for a new opportunity. It's reconcile or suppress once again. while repression is similar to suppression. So just to complete the suppression, let's say something happens to me and I decide, let's say I have an argument with somebody and I'm going to a business meeting. So I consciously suppress the anger that I have towards that other person that I had an argument with while entering the meeting and presenting myself as a sane, calm, whatever. So I'm consciously suppressing it. Repression is similar to suppression in that thought or feeling or emotion is not expressed. But in repression, we basically deny that that element exists at all. So the repressed element could enter our consciousness or then be rejected, banned, or blocked, or whatever, as it is judged to potentially impair our psychological stability of self-image. So obviously both stability and self-confidence are illusionary, as they're based on rejecting the reality of our own thoughts, feelings, and emotions, although repression is generally considered as a destructive act, and it's called defense mechanism, because it defends us from psychological, mental material, which could be dangerous if we don't have enough ego strength or psychological skills to manage it at a time. So as long as the repressed materials, it's in a shadow, it's projected onto the people and situation in our life. So repression distorts not only our observations and perceptions, but also memories of the past and expectations of the future. So another thing that's very beneficial for this technique, and that's integration of a Jungian shadow. As Carl Jung stated, the man cannot be aware or experience his light until he's aware of his darkness. So the sole purpose of human existence is to kindle the light in a darkness of a mere being. So some of the elements we can integrate with these techniques, what we call in Jungian psychology, shadow, id, aspect of shadow or archetype. The unconscious aspects of our personality, which is the conscious ego, does not identify with itself, or totality of unconscious that man is not fully aware of. So we ignore the shadows because they make us afraid, angry, or ashamed. But if you ignore the dark side of your personality, they will come to the surface of an unhealthy way through self-sabotage, like alcohol, drugs, smoking, watching porn, desperately needing success, and all other ways that we try to escape the reality or our true self. So the truth is that most of our time we try to escape ourselves. So we try to hide the parts we don't like, and we wonder why don't never feel fulfilled, or why we never feel really joyful. And that's because the shadow controls much of our behaviors. Because a person tends to reject or remain ignorant to the least desirable aspect of one's personality, the shadow is largely received as a negative. There are, however, positive aspects that can remain hidden in someone's shadow. To know ourselves, we must accept our shadow side. Maybe you are full of suppressed anger towards a member of your family because in some childhood event, whatever, when you were 3 years old, without even being aware of it. The shadow is experienced on its own, as its own entity, anchored into unconscious. So the dark spectrum we all possesses, one that is too intimidating or even muster too courage to face. So the shadow personifies is everything that the subject refuses to admit about themselves. So, according to Jung, the shadow instinctively and irrationally is prone to psychological projection in which personal inferiority is perceived or recognized, or someone else's morals defect. So we can see in others clearly things, but we have a problem seeing the same within ourselves. But once we ask ourselves, how do I feel about this? Then we can define the problem and solve it within ourselves. And then we can release energy and emotional charge from it. If an individual ever tries to see his or her shadow, will quickly become aware or often ashamed of those contexts and impulses, and will refuse to see them in ourselves, but we can easily see them in everybody else, such an egoism, mental laziness, unrealistic fantasies, schemes, conspiracies, chit-chatting, unspeakable love for money or property or whatever. So whatever we do not bring to consciousness in our life, it will appear as destiny. That's what Jung stated. So this explains the self-destructive behaviors that many individuals struggle with and are unable to control despite the consciousness knowledge they may have about it. So I'm going to go in the next videos step by step how actually to do this treatment and what's needed to information to give to a client before you even start with the process. But I will ask you now kindly if you can write down your comments below, and also please click the subscribe button if you like this video or any other that you can find on my YouTube channel. But the idea is to have as many people awaken themselves, and also to have you, literally, to have you be an angel of transformation. Transform first your life and then everybody else's life around you. That's the point. That's why the corona is here. It's a crown. It's a time of awakening. But it's not just enough to awaken on a cognitive level, intellectually. We need to open up our hearts. And this technique, FER transformational technique, is the easiest way. It's easiest way to integrate all the suppressed and repressed emotions, contents, and things that we carry with us everywhere we go. And we don't really need it. And that's where you come in a picture. You, me. This is not really about you and me. This is bigger than both of us. Because it's all about you. You within me, me within you. Same thing, really. So now it's time to integrate everything that has been suppressed for centuries and centuries. Now it's time to awaken. Completely awaken and to be enlightened. Illusion created illusion to figure out who it is. That's all that's needed. One technique can transform a whole world. It starts from you and it starts from me. And now it's our time to awaken, to live full potential, and whatever's blocking us, you applying this technique hour to hour later, you're free from any major issue in life. So now it's your time. Drop me a note in the box, in my personal inbox, and let me know how do you see yourself involved in this, because it's your move now, and I'm here for you. Thank you.